welcome to Nightmare 365. This is the center of weirdness for the entire planet.
There's tons of unsolved mysteries out there. Witches still exist.
What about monsters?
Do you believe in ghosts?
Bigfoot is not out there.
Bigfoot is definitely out there. UFOs are real.
UFOs might be real.
Do you believe in conspiracies?
I consider myself a conspiracy theorist.
I want to believe in all these case files.
Trust no one. The government lies to you.
We're just two brothers exploring the unexplained, mysterious, and spookiness that lives among us. What's going on, all you mystery seekers? Welcome to the Nightmare 365 radio podcast. Everything under one roof is right here. Mysteries. We have, what else do we have? Weekday Weirds.
The Gazette and Eerie Destinations.
The Eerie Destinations. Oh man, we do it all.
Jack-o'-lantern Press.
Jack-o'-lantern Press is one of our sponsors for today's episode. If you haven't already, visit them at jackolanternpress.com. You can check out their book, Transylvania Traveler.
Piggy Picks.
Yeah, the Picarellas, two authors, two friends of ours, and it is really a great book. I recommend anybody checking it out. We do have it. I don't have it here in the studio with me. It's back at my house. But definitely visit jackolanternpress.com. They're great guys, and they also have a podcast. So if you're into monsters, Halloween, everything like that, check them out. They're good. But today, we thought we'd bring back our serial killer series.
We did.
The last one we did and the first one we did was on Ted Bundy. And we figured, yeah, what was that face?
Ted Bundy, he killed a lot of people.
People that are just listening, they don't know, but people that may be watching,
yes,
they're probably like, what the hell's on Greg's head?
It's a Batman mask.
We'll zoom in. It's the Batman mask. It's not a full mask.
It's not a full mask.
It's like that half Bat Dad mask that you always see.
I like that guy.
Do you?
Yeah.
So, nice. Where did you get that? Party City?
No, it's online.
Trick or Treat Studios?
Trick or Treat Studios? No, they don't.
You don't know who Trick or Treat Studios is?
They don't have this on Trick or Treat Studios.
I don't know if they do. They're not a sponsor, but they make great masks and props and everything. So there's another place that you can check out. But today we are opening up the Eerie Vault for Jack the Ripper. And I think we discussed, and we were going to do a two-parter for this. We were going to do a background kind of police investigation, sort of some of our thoughts, and you did the Jack the Ripper tour guide. When did you do that?
Man, like 2012 or 2013. It was a long time ago.
That is a long time ago.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that long ago.
Yeah, it was.
Do you remember any of it?
Yeah, I do. I remember a bunch. Like the alleyways that they took us down, like the I forget where exactly it was, like in a warehouse maybe, but like the door that they said he like edged something in on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. Like a couple of the alleyways, though, were
That's
pretty cool. Like
yeah.
where the first victim was, they said.
Right.
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper, this one, as far as like research and everything and documentaries go, I watched a bunch of documentaries, and we might have a guest on next week's or whenever we do like part 2 of Jack the Ripper. I don't think it'll be next week. It might be like 2 weeks from now, right after Memorial Day. It went fast, man. May went really fast.
Yeah, it's almost June.
Yeah, we talked to this guy, Richard, who one of the actual websites that I really found interesting, and I jumped down the rabbit hole, it's jacktheripper.org, and they do tours. And the gentleman, Richard, contacted me because we were going back and forth on Twitter. And then he said, like, oh, man, I would love to, chat with you guys. So I don't know if we could do, like, a whole episode with him, kind of stuff maybe that we didn't talk about or we didn't touch on, or we'll have him on next week. We're going to give him a call after this show and talk to him about it. Yeah. Because I think he'll be good. He says, like, he likes to talk about suspects. And sure. I know you told me, too, about, like, the tours. They don't really,
definitively
tell you.
Yeah. They like to keep it open to interpretation.
Well, that's the thing too. Like all the information that I read, all the documentaries that I watched, or throughout over the years, everybody has their own suspect and their own suspect that they really enjoy, or they really say like, all right, this is the person. And I even watched a documentary series. It was I don't know if it was a 10-part. I didn't finish watching it. I kind of got like annoyed because they had their one theory and they just went on that.
Sure.
It was like the guy was a descendant of H.H. Holmes,
okay,
which is also on, one of the suspects.
Sherlock Holmes, yeah.
Yeah. Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes is one of the things.
No.
Well, the Picarellas from Jack O'Lantern Press did send us, what was that? The Sherlock Holmes vampire Jack the Ripper thing.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It was like a movie. He said it was pretty good, so I'll have to check that one out. But as far as this episode goes, we're not going to talk about any of the suspects yet. That'll be on part 2. And I think I made a list of mine. I don't know if you have your own list or your own theories.
I got my own theories, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll compare notes on the suspects, but I really thought we'd dive into kind of like the timetable. I'll pull it up here so we could both see it.
Oh, Batman.
You are Batman today.
A2.
Johnny number 5.
A2.
A2 is in the house. So, yeah, I'll pull up this website too, but for those of you who don't know Jack the Ripper, and I'm sure, I don't know how anybody doesn't know at this point, because there's been a movie like From Hell. I don't know if you ever saw the movie From Hell with Johnny Depp.
No, I haven't.
It's a pretty good movie, and that has its own like theories, which a lot of people do believe, you know, that could have been a possibility, that it had the royal family connection into it. So that was one of the things as far as, and I guess the title From Hell comes from one of the letters supposedly Jack the Ripper wrote. So if you're not familiar with Jack the Ripper, it takes place in London in 1888 in Whitechapel, or the district of Whitechapel.
Yeah, that's what they originally called the murderer.
Yeah, Whitechapel murderer, and the leathern apron was like one of the suspects too.
Leatherface.
It could have been Leatherface.
Wasn't it? Who? No, that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The guy wore the leather apron, right?
Well, yeah, he was called Leatherface in a lot of different things. You know, Ed Gein was like the story that it was based off of.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of truth, like with some of these stories, like Jack the Ripper, and like you were saying before, I am curious too, like how Jack the Ripper from 1888 stuck.
Yeah.
You know, where other murderers, serial killers don't seem to get much publicity. Like we always tell, you know, the same thing all the time. Like how come something blows up, like Loch Ness?
Yeah. Remember the guy from that Troy was telling us up in Maine? The guy who owned the inn with his like family or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
He was like chopping up them and then feeding them to guests.
Yeah.
How come that guy didn't blow up?
Yeah, I think number one, which we talked about too, the mystery behind this.
Sure.
Because they never caught, you know, who the Jack the Ripper really was.
They never catch a lot of these people.
Yeah, and then also just like, which we talked about too, and I'll zoom in. I don't know if people could see if they're watching on YouTube, but the pictures and just like.
Yeah, but do you think the pictures are that bad? Or do you think it's just because of the old school?
I mean, just look at Mary Kelly.
Yeah, I know. That looks pretty bad, but I don't know.
What do you mean? That's pretty bad. Like she's decapitated in this picture.
I get that, but I'm just saying, like the other photos, like are they just like old school looking photos, or are they?
Well, this one she was also decapitated, and she's naked and she's like missing some of her face and stuff, and that was Catherine Eddowes. So we're gonna go over all this too about the actual,
just some HD photos, man. That would be nice.
It was 1888.
I'm just saying it would be nice.
High definition.
In
you want all that 4K.
Yeah, I want
now
that.
Even 5K.
Maybe that wouldn't have blown up. DNA was around back then, when we would solve it.
Well, yeah. Before we actually did this episode, and we're recording, and it's Monday releasing it and everything, but there was an article too that came out. It was like, oh, proof again. They always come out with that, and I hate that, where there's like articles that would say like, oh, proof, like everything that like tells you who it is, and then the whole article is like bullshit, and then like the last part is like, well, there's some DNA evidence that point to this person.
It's like the Zodiac killer, right?
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, that was never solved.
The serial killer. So all in all, Jack the Ripper takes place, and if people aren't familiar too, and a lot of reading, if you watch some documentaries and you read up on 1888 Whitechapel.
Oh, London town.
Yeah, which lots going on right in London at this time, and Whitechapel was not a good place to be. It was pretty much the slums of the slums, and just the way it was set up too. And if people aren't familiar, look up maps like during Jack the Ripper's time period. Like there's all these different alleyways, pathways.
I mean, there still kind of is too.
Yeah, I've never been, so I don't know. You could tell me more about that than anything. But just like the amount of people that were in this one area.
Yeah, they're crammed in there.
And the amount of like, I guess, crap that went on there. It was like almost like a common occurrence. Not as far as murders, because they said the previous summer in 1887, there was only 6 murders throughout the whole year. And then the autumn, they always contributed this, the autumn of terror.
The Autumn Killer.
The autumn killer. It could have been like Halloween, right?
Scream.
Like around Halloween time, Scream could have came out. Michael Myers could have been in the area. There's all these like scenarios that could have went down.
Bigfoot could have been in the area.
Yeah, which is fascinating too. If you look into the history of Jack the Ripper, all the victims were female prostitutes. There was 5 victims that are attributed to Jack the Ripper, and they're called the Conical Five, which I was like, what the hell does that mean? And it just means conforming to a well-established pattern of rules. Patterns or rules.
Yeah, so there could have been more. They just didn't fall into the category of
what they were looking for as Jack the Ripper, which I don't understand too, because if you actually look at some of the research and some of the things, which I definitely want to talk about, and they attribute Mary Nichols, which happened on August 31st, 1888, the first murder, like the first killing of Jack the Ripper. But then if you just backtrack just the beginning of the month, in August 7th of 1888, there was also a very similar killing done to Martha
Tabram.
Yeah, which, why isn't this, if you look at her photograph, which is just like the Conical Five, just like all the
it looks
other
like Anna Chapman basically,
and the death is very similar. All these deaths that occurred to these women, their throats were slashed, and then most of them were mutilated. And I say, like, I want to touch base on...
Dude, it takes a sicko to do that.
Well, that's...
Like, it takes one person to kill somebody, sure. Yeah. But to actually mutilate them is a whole...
I know, like, dismember them and
other
everything.
Level, man.
And that's what was interesting, like, watching some of the documentaries on this.
Yeah.
And then watching some of, the other short videos on YouTube, everywhere else that they have. And they just go into the type of person, the psychology that it takes to do this.
Sure.
And they said, that whoever this killer was, they started out slowly, right? Just slashing throats and then moving on until like they got their satisfaction of what their ultimate goal was. It wasn't just about killing somebody. It was about doing so much more to the person.
Well, yeah. What was it? Ted Bundy or who? Some of them I get confused. That actually like held on to their shoes in his basement or something like that.
I mean, a lot of them did that. I mean, just picture when, Ted Bundy got caught, he had a lot of stuff in his trunk, a lot of people took hairs, even, who was it? Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
He kept a lot of the parts.
Maybe I'm thinking
in
of
his
him.
freezer.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, there's tons of these guys, that do commit these crimes, and they do keep some type of souvenir or like something to remember the person by.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, I don't know, like, from what the investigation put forth, and we're going to talk about the police investigation on this part 1, because I think it's really fascinating.
Well, I mean, if anything Sherlock Holmes taught you, okay, was the police back then were not that smart.
I think they were. Like, I read some documentaries and like police reports.
Just saying.
And they did a decent enough job. And I know, like, a lot of people don't think so, depending on who you listen to and who the theories are.
Sure.
But the real question is, what would Batman do? He's like the ultimate detective.
Dude, I'll find him. Okay? I'll be in those alleyways. You won't even see me.
He looks so stupid with that thing.
You won't even see me.
Should I get Spider-Man or something?
Well, you should get something.
I should wear, like, the Jason mask.
What about the Superman? You want to make a Superman mask?
What would that be? Just a random face?
Just glasses.
Just glasses.
That's it. You're Clark Kent.
That makes a lot of sense.
What?
That's stupid.
How's that stupid?
I want to actually get, for Halloween, some type of pumpkin. I mean, I do have the Goosebump mask.
Yeah, you do.
I wouldn't mind getting that mask on. That'd be cool. But I can't take that out of the box. It stays in the box.
It's
I
my
do have Slappy.
in a box.
What?
You never saw that SNL? Justin Timberlake?
No, I don't watch that.
Dick in a box? That was like in the 90s.
I do remember that.
It's a dick in a box, girl.
What the fuck?
You don't remember that song?
I don't remember it.
We'll link that up in the show notes.
I'm not linking that shit up in the show notes.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go over all the 5 killings that were attributed to Jack the Ripper.
Jackie the Ripper.
Jackie the Ripper.
Where is she? That's what I would be saying to him.
I don't think you would. I don't even think you could catch Jack the Ripper.
Are you damn right I could.
No, you couldn't.
A pattern? You got a pattern here. Okay?
All right.
Follow around the prostitutes.
I want you to all right, there's a gazillion of prostitutes in this area. So you're going to follow them around all of them?
No, but they all happen in a block radius where you can kind of tell.
It wasn't a block radius.
Not a block, but I'm saying like confined,
Right.
like block radius.
Okay. So what are you going to do? You're one man. You're just going to run around each street. So what happens
You
if
got to
it
have
happens?
informants out there, okay?
That's what they did. Like, we'll go over the police investigation, but they did put people in plain clothes.
You got to set up
not-
decoys.
They actually did that.
I know they did.
And they just were at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's why a lot of people, like, if you look at the suspect list, right? You have some of the royal family that were on the suspect list. You have some policemen that could have been suspects.
The doctor,
It could have been a doctor.
the barber.
It could have been a butcher, you know, and even one of the not so popular and not so talked about, it could have been a midwife or another prostitute.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Like,
but anyways,
I think that's a good thing, but that we'll talk about that in part,
part
two.
toast.
All right, so setting the stage here. Big Ben, London.
Seen it many times.
Seen it many times.
Yeah.
Seen it ringing. And on Friday, August 31st, 1888, Jack the Ripper strikes right early in the morning, right before people are going to work, 3:40 a.m. And this is like this woman's body, Mary Ann Nichols, and her throat was severely cut, which was 2 cuts that they found in the autopsy and said, and right to her vertebrae. So that's a deep cut. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at that one too, and like the lower part of her abdomen was partly ripped open by a deep jagged wound. Several other incisions inflicted on the right side of her abdomen were, the cause of a small knife. And a lot of people attribute Jack the Ripper's weapon about a 6 to 8 inch blade of
Sure.
some sort. So it could have been like some type of razor. Like, there's people that believe it was a barber, and then
Which would make sense
right, and then they
because of
said,
how sharp it needs to get through all that stuff.
yeah, and Mary Ann Nichols, they said like every wound that she had was inflicted in a downward thrusting manner
Yeah.
on her. And then we could just look at some of the pictures. I'll link the pictures in the show notes too. I mean, all you do is just see her face, and
Yeah, which doesn't look
this-
that bad.
she doesn't look that bad. But
No,
she,
I'm
she
saying
got
like
cut up.
yeah, I'm just saying like the
Well, none
picture.
of them look that bad until you get to Catherine Eddowes and Mary Ann Kelly.
Yeah, those don't look too good.
Or Mary Kelly. Yeah, so the second victim, Annie Chapman, right? It happened. And this is the interesting thing, because it didn't seem to happen almost like a week later.
A week or 9 days later, yeah.
Right. It kept, like making this pattern again. So Annie Chapman, it was on a Saturday, September 8th, and the body of Annie Chapman was discovered approximately at 6 a.m. near a doorway in the backyard of, 29 Hanbury Street?
Yeah.
And with this case, the same thing, they attributed to the Jack the Ripper. Her throat was two deep cuts right there on her throat. Boom, boom. And I guess it was the case where you look at it and it was right to her vertebrae again. Like, those are deep cuts. Again, her abdomen was cut entirely wide open with a section of flesh from her stomach being placed upon her left shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't know like what that was.
Yeah,
as
and
far
like
as
her
that.
intestines and abdomen were then placed on her right hand shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, what's the purpose of this? Because in all the stuff that I read, oh yeah, and the sections of her bladder and vagina were also cut.
I mean, you can kind of see like he got kind of emboldened after the first one.
Well, yeah, he killed, boom, he just made some cuts, some incisions, and then with Annie Chapman, he started like actually cutting and placing.
But the theory about serial killers, though, is generally they start earlier than the first reported case.
Right, like they start killing animals or something.
No,
else
not even
or
that. Like, because if you go back, if you ever want to like solve like serial killers or any killings, right?
Yeah.
They usually like, let's say Mary Nichols was his first one.
Which some people just say no.
It wouldn't be, because they make mistakes on the first one usually, and then they kind of get better as they go along. That's why like the more and more they do things, like the more and more like clean it is.
I
Like
mean,
less evidence they leave behind and stuff like that.
I get that. So maybe that's why like they don't attribute to some of the earlier killings to, like the 5 victims that we have here, because
Correct.
like the throat wasn't slashed deep enough as it was in the case like we just talked about with one of the first supposed victims of Jack the Ripper. Let me get back to that, which was Martha, which was on August 7th. So
almost a month.
maybe
before.
that was as the first victim. Let me look at what they have here on their website.
It may not even be. She may not even be the first victim.
No, she may not be, but you look at that, like the timetable, right? Like we're looking at the timetable and how like much occurs. It's almost like there is a pattern, but then, like between the third and the fourth victims, there's a little bit of like a delay. It's not like that week. It's more like a 2-week period.
Sure.
So where the same thing happened first, like, does he choose his victim randomly? Or does it, he choose their victims like based on certain characteristics as far as, all right, they're all prostitutes. So they're easy. They're easy targets.
Sure.
So if you wanted to fill, like one of the documentaries I like watched, they talk about like fulfilling a fantasy.
Yeah.
And like this is not just about killing. So this would be a great group of people to lure in because they lure you in.
Sure.
And then you just go with them and say like, all right, sure, take me to a nice secure place where we could fool around.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you got one of these things where Jack the Ripper striped, and like sharpen his knives, get ready to cut people up and cut people open. Yeah. So I do agree with you. And I just don't I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows because we don't have real evidence. It's not like DNA evidence as far as anything else goes. So we get now to the third and fourth victim. The reason we say the third and fourth victim because they happen on the same day.
Yeah.
And a lot of people speculate that Jack the Ripper was interrupted during his first kill.
Correct.
With Elizabeth Stride. So Elizabeth Stride.
Elizabeth Strode. Laurie Strode.
So you're connecting it too.
Laurie Strode's mother. Grandmother.
But it's Stride.
It's Strode, though.
You want to go with Strode?
Sure.
That's terrible.
That's not terrible.
Yeah, this woman died by a killing, and now you're attributing to a Halloween movie.
Correct.
So messed up. Batman wouldn't do that.
Yes, he would.
No, Batman wouldn't do that.
I took off the mask. I'm Bruce Wayne now.
Now you're Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne.
Where's your suit?
I don't need a suit.
Because you're Bruce Wayne?
I'm Bruce Wayne.
All right.
We'll
call you Bruce for the rest of the time. So Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were both killed in the early morning hours of Sunday, September 30th. Stride's body was discovered approximately 1 a.m. in an alley or like this yard.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this place?
Yeah.
In there where the what is it now called? Henrik Square?
Yeah, Henrik Street.
In Whitechapel.
Mm-hmm.
The cause of her death was a single clear-cut incision measuring about 6 inches across the neck, which had severed her left carotid artery.
Yep.
Yeah, and trachea before determining, where she couldn't breathe and whatever else.
Well, yeah, man. Once you cut that, you're going to choke on your own blood.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons, too. People, speculate, why wasn't there a lot of blood? But if you cut the throat, most of it's going to be drained out. By the time he does his other incisions, there's not going to be a lot of blood splatter. And that's where a lot of people speculate, too. Like, all right, they didn't see anybody walking around with all this blood on them. Yeah, and people believe, this is where Jack the Ripper was interrupted, for doing any further mutilations to her body, which, he probably was going to do. Because then they were saying in a lot of different things that Jack the Ripper now, all right, he didn't fulfill his fantasy that he wanted to this night.
Correct. Now he has to do it again.
So he's like, all right, we have to do it again. This is, picture how close, the police were if they were right there or they got interrupted. Because they did say, the police were now upping their patrols after the 2 murders.
Sure.
And then they're probably... I think it was 15 minutes or something. I think it was this one. I don't know. I don't have it in my notes.
Their trachea, also, you're not going to hear anybody scream.
So you're not going to hear anybody, run away, scream, anything like that.
No, man. Once you cut that, you're done.
Yeah, so that means, she's walking in somewhere, taking him somewhere, and he's kind of, behind her, and then bam.
Could be, or in front of her, covering her mouth.
True. But then he would get a lot of blood splat on him. So that's a thing. Why would you do that? Why would you risk that? Unless they were at the side or behind them. That would be my move if she's leading you somewhere. That would be your move. I'm just saying this would be I'm trying to get in the mind of a serial killer. Yeah, and then there were several witnesses too for this one. And later informed police that they saw Stride with a man earlier that night. But each gave different descriptions.
Which, as we know, they're...
Yeah, witnesses are tough, and if it's that late at night,
You ain't gonna see shit.
You're not gonna
just
see
gonna
stuff?
you're just gonna make up stuff that you maybe saw that earlier that day.
yeah, and how many people were actually, not drunk at the time too? And then the same thing, like the fourth victim of Jack the Ripper, and then it was Catherine Eddowes, and pretty much the same thing. Obviously, with the not too far away from where the first, it happened, and then just seeing the pictures of her, like this is where it like sucks because he definitely started doing Catherine Eddowes with her. She wasn't just slashed.
Sure.
She was basically like her nose was cut off. There was almost like these two, I guess you could call them triangles, right on her cheek that were cut out, and then she was pretty much cut from like her throat, all the way down.
Which you could probably see like if he got caught, he maybe got pissed, and was in like a rage
and took it out on her because like when you see this is like stepping it up now from the other three victims. Now on the fourth victim, Catherine Eddowes, he really like amped it up and almost like, see, was this taunting like the cops, or was he gonna do this with like this stuff on the cheek? Was this a sign, with this?
No, because then you would see a pattern and it continue through all of them if he was like taunting the cops.
Yeah, this is just like when you see pictures of her, and like you could actually look these up on like the website, and we're gonna link it in the show notes. So all you have to do is go to
the
galleries.
SNL
I'm not
Justin Timberlake one.
I don't support Justin Timberlake.
Well, why not?
I don't know.
You're not an NSYNC fan?
I actually liked when he was on Punk'd and he was crying.
Why was he crying on Punk'd?
You don't remember that one?
I remember the show, but I don't remember him.
They were taking all the stuff out, like of his house, and saying like it's been repossessed.
Okay.
And like his mom was in on it. His mom was there, and he's like, "What do you mean they're taking all my stuff?" And then like they're fooling around. And he's like, "No, man, you can't be taking it." He started like crying. He's like, "They can't be taking all this stuff." And then like finally like whatever.
Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, he comes out. And he's like, "Oh my god," Like I just thought that was funny. He's not a bad guy, but I don't know. I don't really care for him.
Who's he married to now? Jessica Biel?
I don't know. You follow more of that stuff than I do.
Hey, man. You got to keep up on these things.
I follow Jack the Ripper. You're following Justin Timberlake.
I'm not following anybody.
You were a big NSYNC fan.
No, I was a Backstreet guy.
Were you really?
No, 98 Degrees. Come on, Nick Lachey.
Yeah, that show was good. All right, serious topic, murderers.
I'm just saying, you got to lighten up the mood. You can't be all doom and gloom here.
I'm all doom and gloom all the time. That's like my MO. I'm looking at like crazy shit like this. Like this is sick to look at. Like this is somebody that, was
it just doesn't look real though,
It doesn't, not to us, because 1888, it's a black and white photograph and you just see her ripped up.
Yeah.
And it does suck. And the fourth victim. So that's kind of now he's getting,
I think he just got pissed.
Yeah, because it was an hour later, he got interrupted with Stride, and then just to describe this is just, it's tough. I don't know. Like, well, how do you really describe all this? So like even several buttons of her that she was found was, like removed. There was different clothing items. Was it her clothing item? I don't have this in the show notes. I think it was her clothing or maybe Elizabeth Stride's piece of clothing that they found later on, like further outside of this. Did they ever talk about that? Like the only piece of like real hard evidence that they had?
Not really.
On the tour?
No.
Yeah, because I think it was her. I think it was Elizabeth Stride's, or maybe it was Catherine Eddowes. I don't see that here in the notes, which I'm sorry, but I know there was, and I'm sure we could talk about if we ever have Richard on, and ask him what was like because that was the only piece of evidence that was found, like on her. Yeah, and this one, like this, he's really. I mean, you can just see where like her cuts on her face. You can't even tell. Like it doesn't look real.
No, it doesn't.
And this is where like it's getting, and that's the thing too. When we look at the police investigation, when you want to really say and look at this stuff, there's no physical hard evidence.
Well, no, yeah.
Like, and that was one of the things that the police were frustrated with because there's no evidence to go on. Like this guy, whoever it was.
Well, that's why some speculated it was a cop because he knew what they would look for.
It could be a great theory because this person did not leave any clues besides the one piece of clothing, which I think somebody did buy and like had DNA testing. I think that's where like a lot of the DNA testing on came, and they came back with one of the people that was a suspect,
Sure.
which we'll talk about, was from this clothing. I think it's in that part of the notes, which I don't have in front of me. But the last victim of supposedly Jack the Ripper happened.
MJK.
MJK?
MJK.
What?
MJK, Mary Jane
I'm
Kelly.
just kidding. So yeah, so the last victim happened on November 9th, 1888 at around 10:45 a.m. The body of Mary Jane Kelly was found. And this one,
She was just mutilated and hacked to death.
yeah, just because this one supposedly Jack the Ripper had plenty of time and he was actually in the room with her.
Correct. So he didn't have to rush. He didn't have to. He took his time.
Yeah, which I don't know why you wouldn't do from the on, like the get go, if they were unless they had each of the different prostitutes said we were going to go like to this room, but there's going to be other people around.
Sure.
So maybe that's why he did what he did, but then maybe Mary Kelly took him to a place and she was just in a single room, right? So she was lying in bed in a single room where she lived at 13 Miller Court. And at 11 o'clock, her face has been hacked beyond recognition, with her throat's, severely cut down to the spine and to the abdomen, almost emptied all the organs. Yeah, all the organs. And just looking at this from what I remember, because I remember this one like the most.
Well, because he took the heart.
Yeah, like he took out her, uterus, kidneys. One breast was cut and placed beneath her head. Then, just the amount of sheer, like even her thighs were cut off.
Mm-hmm.
Like her thighs, her stomach, like you look at pictures of this one.
Which again, like I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, I don't know like what the fixation is with this.
Unless like the only other theory too that they like said on the tour, which I remember is,
does this place still exist? Because that's the one thing I don't know. Like,
yeah, all the places still exist, not just like the.
So, but 13 Miller's Court, like where Mary Jane.
Yeah, it exists, but it's not like
what it is.
Is
there like placards?
No, there's not.
No, there's just like this is the tour.
Yeah, this is the tour. This is what they know because like a lot of the street names changed.
Yeah,
everything like that.
I know they reconfigured it, but yeah, like the body was so badly mutilated. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at certain photographs from this,
again, they don't look real.
They don't. It just looks like something that you would see as like a prop thing for Halloween.
Yep.
And yeah,
But yeah, one of the theories that they were saying was like maybe this whoever he was or she ever was.
Yeah.
Was like
what do you think happened to her heart? Because her heart was missing, her abdomen.
Well, they said that
thighs.
he might have took it.
Like, what do you do with that? Just keep it?
Souvenir, or just throw it in like the Thames River over there.
And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, they were saying like maybe like he was like either, not like in our terms now, like bullied as a kid or like couldn't get like a girl or anything like that. That's why he chose these people.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the information that did come out, they said just that. Mm-hmm. Like either he was so enraged with women, he was so enraged with like prostitutes,
or his like
general.
Mom. Maybe like they were saying like maybe his mom was a prostitute, stuff like that. Or you don't know, like maybe his like he didn't know his mom. I don't know.
True. I mean, there's so much speculation and there's so much what ifs with this case. And one of the things I really wanted to touch upon, there was 4 letters. Like there was a postcard, and like we mentioned the Johnny Depp movie From Hell, and there is a letter that's called From Hell. One of the Dear Boss letters, that's where the Jack the Ripper name came from. Because if you actually read the Dear Boss letters, like at the signature on it is yours truly, Jack the Ripper. And that's kind of like where they got that from. And I mean, you could definitely go in. I recommend anybody go in and read like the actual letters that were written taunting cops. And most of them, I think, from what everybody surmises, that they were all like fakes or forgery, like people taunting them.
Sure.
And who knows? Like,
you don't know.
Is that the thing? Like nobody really knows. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to definitely touch upon is the the police.
Mm-hmm.
I think they kind of get overlooked on this case too, just because during this time, there's obviously a lot going on and people are in a panic. And the Metro Police Service were the ones who took over this investigation. And from their investigation, the serial killers, whatever, it could have been more than one. We don't know, from what they had. And they said there was 11 separate murders between 1888 and 1891, known on the docket as the Whitechapel murders. Obviously, we know the 5 that we just talked about, but there was also 6 other murders that did happen. And
they were all linked up to Jack the Ripper in some degree or fashion, just because they fit certain criteria or fit like the mold of what he did.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting to me too, because another theory that I really liked, and we'll talk more about it with the suspects, but is that during this time either he was caught for another crime and was, that was it, he died,
sure,
or whoever that person, they died, or this was a case of they were put away in a, some type of asylum, or they traveled to another country.
Correct.
And then they kept doing what they were doing elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's where a lot of people too, link H.H. Holmes into it.
Which would be smart. I mean, if these killers were smart, they would just continually travel.
I mean, if in a case like this, you have ample, opportunities to do it. Like this is a big, seaport faring city. You could just jump on it, probably any ship at the time.
Sure.
And just get a ticket over here to America and then just start going nuts. And that was one of the big things too, like where H.H. Holmes came into it. One of the people that I really like is from this documentary, which I'll share on next week's episode. But the 2 people I want to talk about is Alice Mackenzie, which happened pretty much almost a half year later in July.
Correct.
In 1889. And no one talks about like her or Frances Coles, which happened in February. So these are big jumps.
2 years later.
Yeah, not even just
1891.
Yeah, not even just like we talked about like a week or 2 afterwards. Like these people, this was it. And then all of a sudden off again. And we even talked about like a lot of people attribute Emma Elizabeth Smith as another, Jack the Ripper killings, which happened in April of 1888. So we're even going back before, and her occupation, again, was a prostitute, and she's a suspected victim of Jack the Ripper. Same thing, too. Like, if you look at all the evidence that points to it and, like, how she died, same kind of thing.
Yeah, very similar.
Maybe this was one of the cases that, all right, one of his first victims could have been Emma Smith, and then it just didn't work out the way he thought, and then kind of had to retest or retool himself and going on. Yeah, and like the police. I definitely wanted to talk about some of the police that were in charge of this investigation. And we had Sir Charles Warren.
He was the police commissioner.
At the time.
Commissioner Gordon.
Could have been. Maybe they would have caught him. Yeah, one of the, which gentleman was it? Because I think one of the superintendents, and a lot of people did have their own theories. Like you look at all these different detectives. One of the lead detectives was Aberline, and he was put on the case. And I think it was his journal that you could look at, and he suspects like a certain person in the case. And like this is what's fascinating to me about Jack the Ripper itself. Not just Jack the Ripper, but like the people, because you always hear parts of the story. You don't hear the whole story. Like every one of those women that died have a story to tell. Like the lives that they lived, just trying to pay their way and just pay the whatever, like the 4 shillings or the pences to just have a room and board at night. Because I was even reading like people would just pay to just stand up and like be held up by like a rope. And like this is how like overcrowded it was.
It's ridiculous.
So even like somebody like, all the different detectives that were on the case. And yeah, he was part of, he was a detective with H Division. And I think at the time, Whitechapel murders, it was the H Divisions that really took over the murders, and investigation to this. And yeah, he had his own theories. And I think he was 45 years old at the time in 1988. I love how like the description of this guy.
Portly and balding officer.
Yeah, it was a thick mustache with
thick
bushy sideburns,
mustache,
whiskers. Yeah, he spent 14 years as a detective in the H division and had gained, some of the best street knowledge that you could actually gain as an officer. And some of these guys, what they said was they had, like, some of them believed that they had Jack the Ripper in their custody.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just said they just didn't have enough evidence. Because if you look at this case, like anything else, right, you have to have like proof. And there was no proof. There was no evidence. They didn't have DNA. It was a lot different. Nobody could pinpoint this particular person here. So that's where I think just the police in itself have such a hard time.
Well, they do, yeah. If there's no physical evidence to go on or eyewitness reports or something that's pointing you or putting you in like the crime scene, you can't really do anything.
Yeah, and most of the techniques that, again, like we talked about, and most of the techniques that they really relied on was just the use of crime scene photography. And that's pretty much it. Like, imagine trying to, like, build a case on just a picture.
I mean, you can. There are ways to do that.
I'm sure
like
there is.
Blood splatters. There's blood splatter experts.
Yeah.
So, like, where the person was killed, how they were killed, will tell you, like, where the suspect was standing, how tall the suspect is, what kind of weapon they used. So stuff like that, yes.
Yeah, and they also talked about, like, the victim's eyes were photographed. Like, that was another a big thing. And then the crime scenes were not photographed, just like the people.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like, is this just something that when we look at the case itself and we look at, all right, there was no crime scene photographs that were really taken. So they're not taking anything that's really in the surrounding area. They're just taking...
Which that's evolved too, because now they do.
Yeah, so, like, why don't you think they would do that?
I think they didn't know probably back then. Like, crime, like, scene technology has evolved.
I guess now because we could look at it and we say, like, all right, we know all this information. But back then, like, walking in, be like, all right, this person died in here. Like, let's not touch anything. See if we find
there was no fingerprinting back then. I don't know when the fingerprinting started.
Yeah,
but there was no fingerprinting, no DNA, no anything like that. Like, forensic evidence was very limited back then.
Yeah, I think there was a letter that was wrote in the interest in fingerprinting impressions that were left behind on fragments of, like, different pottery and stuff. But because even if not a possible means of identification yet.
Yeah, because even back then, like, even if you did have a fingerprint, like, unless you were a criminal beforehand, you didn't have your fingerprints on file.
True.
So they didn't know who you are. And then they had to go through them manually. It's not like a computer system that now they run, like, points of interest. You had to do it manually.
Yeah.
Think of how long that would take.
I couldn't imagine. If you just have to look at it and compare, like, all right.
Correct. That's what you have to do.
And you have to say, like, all right, this one looks like a match, but it's not. And then you have to look at eyewitness testimonies, which supposedly there was people that did identify people, but then in the end they said, like, no, we're not testifying, or we're not saying anything else. And then so that was a whole big thing that the police had to deal with, and they were upping their game. Like we did say, like, if you actually look at some of the police records, and I think this is just as fascinating as the case itself. So if you want to dive in, check out our show notes, because we're going to
dive head first.
Dive head first. Go down that rabbit hole, and just look at some of the writings from the detectives, because they have awesome quotes and they have awesome insight of what they were doing. Like they were double patrolling, walking around a lot more. Like in one of the cases in the murders, they had 15 minutes from the time the guy did his loop and like passed to actually murder one of the victims, and then by the time he got around again, now there's this woman in the alleyway just like laying there.
Not good.
Did they talk about any of that too? Like just the police itself
on
the tour?
Yeah,
or was
people
it more
ask,
just
like,
focused.
It's more focused on like Jack the Ripper and the victims and like where they took place. But like they did talk about, like, especially in the alleyways, they were talking about like where the cops would be and patrolling and like stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like we talked about, which I mentioned before, and there was where they did dress up like prostitutes.
I would,
to kind of like entice somebody. Imagine just standing there and just like on the corner with like a wig on and just like, hopefully he comes at me. And like, see, was that premeditated? Like, did they already have people that Jack the Ripper wanted to target? And they were like, what else could you have done in the police investigation to have caught Jack the Ripper itself? Besides
like station every person every night with like a prostitute, nothing.
Yeah, and I don't know.
You have to get lucky, man. That was one of the things too,
whereas I didn't find any information on that. I think that would be cool maybe to add to the list of not just like suspects, but just information about how many prostitutes there were at the time.
Who knows?
Yeah, see, like,
Hundreds.
I mean, there could have been, like, you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of police work back then came down to luck.
It
Being
did.
at the right place at the right time. Like even now, like in today's world, with all the technology and all the everything you have, like sometimes like the police have to get lucky.
I mean, they do, of course. And we have DNA, so that's like the thing now. You could take like a hair sample. I wonder how much will like hair maybe that was left behind at the scene from Jack the Ripper, like some type of like spit or maybe its own blood or
The one that the last victim,
Mary Kelly.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was probably a lot of DNA there, just because of the fact that he took his time.
Yeah, there had to be like maybe sweat, something like that, like dripped on, or
What shoes he was wearing, like because there was probably blood everywhere. So where he walked, what he did.
I mean, just looking at the information that we have, I don't think it was more a sexual thing for this person.
No, it was more mutilation and like
Yeah.
humiliation for them. Probably.
Yeah, so
He probably just liked killing people.
and that goes to like to my next thing, like how many people are attributed to it. Like can we look at information now? Like has anybody? I haven't seen this too, and maybe this will be.
I
a
would
good
wonder
thing
if there's
to,
any
like,
guys
ask.
that were like mutilated back then. You
Yeah.
know, that you could find. You probably can't find that information too readily available, but like,
Well,
was this like a one-off? Was
Well,
it just women?
Well, that's the thing. Like, is it? Did it stop? Did it happen in another country? Did this person, travel, or did this person die? Like that. This is one of the biggest mysteries of all time, and I think like people just talking about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, like people don't share information back then. They didn't even share information up until like 9/11. Like the local police departments, state departments, federal agencies, even within the federal government, they didn't share like information. They really sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, which is really weird to me.
You would think there would be one database, but there's not. Everyone likes to keep like their information secret.
Yeah, which I don't get. It's like, what are you trying to? Are you trying to prove that like you're the best and you're gonna catch everybody? Like we all need help sometimes.
I think it all comes down to money.
It always does. It
Your
always
budget.
comes down.
You got to justify your means.
Justify the means.
That's it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear your list of suspects.
Oh yeah.
And
The Queen of England. Oh, cheerio.
is that how she talked?
Yep.
Yeah, we didn't even. I mean, what else could we really like dive in and talk? Because this one is just so perplexing because there's not any information you can go on.
Yeah, there's no physical evidence. There's just the victims' names and the photos.
And when I think about like when you look at the one website, which I'll link in the show notes, like
JackTheRipper.com,
it's .org.
.org,
They have
.net.
like there's 20 something people like here. You could actually vote on the suspects. Let me see here. I'll pull it up right now. I'll bring it up on our screen.
Vote.
So now you can cast your vote. And this will be something maybe we could have people do on our own social media pages too for next week's episode or whenever we, I think this will be part two. Well, part two would definitely be in the beginning of May. So like, I think the
beginning
first
of May.
Oh, it is May. Shit. Beginning of June.
Beginning of June.
Because yeah, maybe we could record it next week. But I think maybe this one would be cool to do live.
I think it was Sir William Wallace.
He's on there.
No, he's not.
He's definitely on there.
Braveheart is not on there.
H.H. Holmes is on there.
Sherlock Holmes. Robert Downey Jr.
There's about 20-something people on this list of just who do you think Jack the Ripper was, and you can vote for yourself. So maybe we'll do this one live. We'll make sure we'll do it live. We'll maybe have Richard on here.
32
we'll talk
to
him.
be exact.
The what?
32.
Ooh, look at you. You counted.
Yep.
You counted while I had it up. Nice job.
Boom.
So there's 32. Could there be 45? Could there be 62?
There could be infinity.
Infinity?
Well, yeah.
Everybody's a suspect.
Everyone's a suspect.
Yeah, maybe we'll cast our vote. You want to do that on our live? We'll do a live show for part 2. We'll cast our vote. We'll make sure that everybody has their
We'll get
own
the
thoughts
YouTube
on
channel up
Yeah,
live
and
so
we'll-
people can vote and shout out their votes.
theories, and we'll actually look them up too. I think that'll be kind of cool because
Yeah.
I have 3 people that I want to talk about that I'm leaning towards.
I'm leaning towards this guy. You don't say it, but I'm leaning towards this guy.
I mean, that's just like saying A2 or anybody.
That's right.
I mean, that's just pretty much.
H.H. Holmes, Sherlock Holmes.
It could be. It could be Michael Myers coming back from the dead every Halloween.
He
Autumn of
ain't on
Terror.
there.
Yeah, so maybe we could do that. I think that would be kind of cool.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
Get people.
Dr. Loomis is not on there.
Yeah, he is.
What is that?
He was on there as the second person.
No.
Rich Froning was on there.
You don't even know who that is.
I know exactly who that is. You have posters all over your wall.
You're damn right I do.
So, are you going to put it back on?
Yep.
Putting Batman back on. We'll wrap this up. And in wrapping this up, I think we have to give a big shout out to somebody.
We do.
Do you know who it is?
Our super fan.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, you're not playing it.
Well, I don't have the drop in front of me.
I hit it for you.
Thank you.
Everybody wants you to control the board. You have to control the board.
Well, you took it today.
I didn't take it.
You took it over there today.
It's in the middle of the.
That is
the
not
thing.
the middle. That's right over there.
All right. Well, I can't see that far. We have to get a better board.
Wah, wah,
We
wah.
have to get like the board like that's put up like right here.
Why don't you
we
just
could
put it in Jason's hand?
But then that's too far away. See? And that's gonna definitely
Wah, wah,
fall.
wah.
You could hit it. It's right here.
Wah, wah, wah. Wah, wah, wah.
People aren't gonna like this shit.
They love this shit.
No, they don't. All right. So we definitely want to give a shout out to our new Patreon patron. I always say like Patreon, but they're patrons.
Patreon
right?
patrons.
Patreon
Super fans.
Greg calls him super fan. Thanks to Lisandro Torres. Thank you very much for contributing to our show.
Donated.
Yeah, things like this really help us out and get the ball rolling on this podcast and keep it growing. But keep up with the latest weirdness by visiting Nightmare 365 for all of our shows, contact information, and visit our shop there. We have some cool merchandise. Greg put up a mug on there.
Yep.
We have a mug recently added to our shop there. And support our show by leaving a review anywhere that you listen to us. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. And if you're really people aren't going to like that very much. And if you like extra content, like, or you want to get some extra content, you really enjoy the show.
Want to believe.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. See, I don't. It's a bad thing. Batman's in charge of the board.
I want to believe.
You definitely want to believe. It's more than believing now. I think you definitely stepped up your game from the skeptical sidekick
Depends on what the topic is.
to why is that? Why you just get to the point.
It depends on the topic, man. Because I don't believe Bigfoot lives in caves.
That's a great theory.
That is a great theory, but I don't. I want to see
you
a
may
Bigfoot.
you may not subscribe to that. But if you want to hear Greg's theory on Bigfoot
Trust no one.
and you want to get more information on all the shows and you just enjoy these, like do you enjoy the Weekday Weirds, extra podcasts, things like that, we're going to give that to you if you become a patron.
Super
So
fan.
visit. Everything can be found on our website. Go check it out and definitely look out. We'll link it up on our website when the live show is going to be. Cast your vote. Who is Jack the Ripper? Let us know beforehand. Send in all your comments like that. Comment on the video, everything. Email us at matt@nightmare365.com or give us a call. And if you have a really good theory, we could air it, right?
Hell yeah.
We could definitely air it. And our phone number is 732-660-8893. And until next time,
Stay spooky.